Hello, and thank you everyone for joining us today. This is a webinar on how to register your Caspian. This is for both part-bred and purebred Caspians, but for the examples that we'll be showing today, we'll be walking through registering a purebred Caspian. So the questions, if you have any questions during this webinar, we'll be taking questions at the end. We're just going to coast through and walk through this step by step, and I guess here we go. So there will be different scenarios for registering Caspians, but the most common one will be registering foals. Foals are usually the ones that are born that need registration. They haven't been registered yet because we don't allow registration prior to birth, of course. So we're going to walk through what this sort of looks like. A new foal usually is born to parents that are already registered. Under this category, they would be registered with CHBA. Stallion report may or may not be on file. We do not require a stallion report because we do not want to hold up registration of foals. If you have any dispute with mare owner and foal and you're a stallion owner, we hope that you can take care of that privately and not interrupt the process of registration for the foal through holding up a stallion report. This is the number one reason why we haven't made it a requirement. Although it is a recommendation and it is nice to have for planning purposes, it can defeat the point of conservation of an endangered breed. So bear in mind that that's our position as it stands. When the Caspian breed is a little safer and we Okay, sometimes we'll have a registration that needs to be processed a little bit differently, and usually this is when we get a horse that we're registering. Okay, sometimes we'll have a registration that Okay, sometimes we'll have a registration that needs to be processed a little bit differently, and usually this is when we get a horse that we're registering from unregistered parents. And that's just meaning that the horse is from parents that aren't registered with us, with CHBA. Generally, the horses that were parents of the offspring will have DNA run at a lab somewhere, and you can submit the parentage reports for those horses that are the parents, or you can bring hair samples for the parents and bring whatever information you have on the parents to register the foal. And since we're doing this without the parents being registered, it's essentially whatever information you can get a hold of that will be valuable for registering your foal. We understand that there are some gaps in the DNA record, and some horses will go back to a horse that wasn't DNA typed at all, and this does happen with the older horses because DNA wasn't required in the Caspian breed up to a certain year. And so if your horse came from Australia, there might not be DNA on it. If your horse is much older from the UK, there might not be DNA on it. That depends on the parents. But a lot of DNA was processed on horses that were brought to the USA and were bred here and born here. So the DNA on the horses in the USA and Canada should be available. And if you if you can try to get hair samples from the parents, or you can get just the DNA printouts, like I said. Um, so what we would do is we would take the hair sample from your foal or horse, depending on the age, and use that to run a DNA typing. So you get that base ground, and then we would try to parentage from there. So depending on what year your horse was born, the requirements for DNA may not be a requirement. It's like a certain year, I believe it's 2015, where DNA started to become a requirement. So if your horse is older than that, we could just go based off of the pedigree and the claims that were made by the breeders. So in a nutshell, this is like one of the more complicated cases, but it's rare. We don't see that many of them anymore. But we are here to help and offer whatever we can do to problem solve and get these horses registered, because our goal is, of course, to ensure the Caspian's survival, and we don't want to leave any horse unregistered. The rest of the registration information is basically the same as before. If you have a sire license to provide, then provide it. If there isn't a sire license available, or if the sire was never licensed, then the horse would be in the silver stud book, or basically section B if it's a purebred, and then part bred doesn't require stallion licenses. And then if available, provide the microchip number. Microchips, again, required for section A for gold registration. And provide photos or outline drawings of markings, just like before. Photos are required for the gold registration. We would prefer markings in lieu of photos, so if you're not going to provide photos, please provide us some marked up drawings to show us where the markings are on these horses. And you can provide both if you really want to. We're not going to say no to more information. More information is always welcome. Importing a Caspian horse. This is generally the easiest to process because the Caspian has been registered with another registry. Most of the work has already been done, and we recognize any other Caspian registry, so you're pretty much guaranteed to be able to enter your horse through an import. Why do people import their Caspians? It just makes it easier for registering foals. You have maybe Caspians registered in different registries, and maybe some registries don't recognize other Caspians from other registries, and you want a registry that will have them all in one place. We're the place that will do that for you. So you can bring in a Caspian by providing a certificate of registration, proof that you purchased the horse. This can be from a third-party sale, it can be from the last owner, it can be the recorded ownership on the certificate itself. There's lots of options for proof of ownership. And then a copy of the horse's DNA report that establishes that this horse is this horse and these are the parents of this horse. And send a hair sample if there is no DNA report available. And then you can select which section your horse belongs to based off of the information that is available on the horse's certificate, and if there are any gaps. So let's say there's just enough information for your horse to be registered in the silver section, section B, and you want to have your horse be registered in the gold section, section A, you just have to provide that extra information that is missing and that is preventing your horse from being registered in the gold registry. Of course, there may be some difficulties when it comes to stallion licensing, because not all stallions have been licensed that were breeding in the USA, for example. So some horses just won't be able to be upgraded to gold. However, our registry doesn't keep horses in silver indefinitely. So if ever the stallion license is obtained, you can upgrade the horse. And if that horse has offspring, that offspring's not doomed. I don't want to have people think that the silver registry is a lower registry and not a quality registry. It is. It's just that the stallion licensing is just that extra icing on the cake to bring the horse into the gold registry. So if there's a foal that's born from a silver registered mare but is sired by a gold registered stallion with a stallion license, then that foal is also eligible to be registered in gold or silver. So we didn't want to keep horses just hanging out in one if someone along the lines had forgotten to or neglected to license a stallion. We wanted a little more flexibility built into our registry, so we built that in so so the breeders have the confidence that they know that these horses, if they're quality, they can get the stallion license, and then they can pursue those interests with their foals. One of the interests that some breeders may have will be outcrossing with other breeds, and that's completely acceptable for our standards as our registry. We do encourage part bred Caspians to be registered and born. We keep track of them. We feel that they are valuable. So if a breeder has a part bred program, we welcome them here. So for part bred Caspians, there's less requirements, of course. If available, microchip, provide for outline of drawings of markings. At least one parent must be a purebred Caspian to be in the Section C part bred. But we also have a Section D part bred where both parents are part bred Caspians. But we will only do this for 50% Caspian crosses. So these parents must maintain, or the foals must maintain, at least 50% of the horses in their pedigree being of Caspian lineage. So they must go back to Caspians, or 50% of the horses in the foundation lines must be Caspians. I don't know how else to express that, but basically we won't register something that is 25% Caspian. So if you have a Caspian cross that's a Caspian to let's say a quarter horse, and you produced a 50% Caspian quarter horse, and now you want to breed that to another breed like a fjord, you will not be able to register a 25% Caspian that's 50% fjord. You would need to breed a fjord to a Caspian and get a 50% Caspian fjord, and then cross that 50% Caspian fjord with that 50% Caspian quarter horse, and then you would also produce another Caspian cross that could be registered in the Section D. And now Section D is kind of like a experimental playground for breeders who really want to pursue the idea of creating a Persian pony that meets their sport needs and different tastes. And we understand that Caspians are probably not fitting the bill for every desire out there. But in order to promote the Caspian, we feel that part breds are a very good avenue for that, so that people will get the idea that there's Caspian in these horses, and then they can promote their horses and their programs the way that they want to, and also promote the breed. We feel it's a win-win for everyone. So we are excited to bring this program to life and encourage people who are breeding part breds to continue breeding part breds, and we look forward to seeing what you produce. Oh yeah, and we hope that you register them. So the first step of registering any horse is taking photos. Here's a step on how we do that. So just to rehash, registration photos are a requirement of the gold certificates, which is Section A for purebred horses. Registration photos are not a requirement, although they are a recommendation for all the others for silver and for part breds. And if you're not submitting photos for those others, we do have an option for submitting the markings on drawings of horses, and that's on the forum, which we'll cover a little bit later. So to take quality registration photos, there's a few tips to get a nicer image. And the first one, which I don't have on here, is kind of obvious. It's just make sure your horse is clean and brushed before you take a photo. If we understand if you haven't had time to handle your horse, but clean at least, maybe brushing isn't really necessary. Sometimes brushing will bring up dirt and make the horse look messier. So we understand if you're like, I'll just grab my horse when he or she looks clean and take photos that way. You know, just so long as you can see the markings um, and the horse is presentable, that's usually the best. But just for reference, these photos will be on the certificate, and you might want them to look their best. That said, the angle in which you hold your camera does do a lot also. Camera lenses are round, of course, by how they function, and when you have a round thing taking a picture that is square, you get some distortion. It's that whole, square peg, round hole sort of thing. So the best position to hold your camera will be on the horse's level. So perspective wise, it would have the least amount of distortion the further back you are. So trying to get as much of the whole image as possible with the whole horse in it. Not too far back because you don't want to lose the detail. So you just want the horse to fill the view with some buffer room around it, and hold the camera roughly around the shoulder height of the horse for the best, least distorted view of the horse. What does distortion do? It just makes the horse look a little squatty if you take it from too high up of an angle, or high angles can also make the horse's legs look like they're not straight. So you just try to make it about shoulder level when you're taking a photo of the horse. This is obviously easier with larger horses because we stand about shoulder level. And that's usually my advice, is like, just get down on the horse's level, especially if you're taking pictures of foals. It's going to matter a lot. When you're photographing your horse, put the horse on a hard surface, whether it's hard pan dirt, a gravel driveway, a concrete driveway, or somewhere that is flat, even in a stall, just so that you have a clear view of the horse's entire leg all the way down to the bottom of the hoof. If you have freshly mowed grass, that might work too, so long as the entire hoof is not covered, because sometimes white markings are right around the top of the hoof. And the last tip that I have would be to take photos in decent lighting. The lighting is going to matter as much as the angles, because your photos will be grainy or blurry if the light is too low. It is very difficult to take pictures of moving energetic foals in a low light setting. So sometimes you can wait for a bright day so you have lots of sunlight to take photos of foals. The perfect weather for taking photos of horses for registration is not necessarily a strong, clear, sunny day, but probably partly cloudy or overcast day where the sun doesn't have full strength. It gives it more of a diffused effect, so you don't have strong shadows on your horse. And that's one other thing to watch out for, is if you have very strong shadows, then you're also making it difficult to see markings, or to see how the hair whirls and stuff like that. Although we're not going to be too worried if you can't get all the hair whirls in. We're mostly focused on trying to see these markings. So you want to avoid strong shadows, and you want to avoid dim lighting, and most of all, you just want to make sure that your markings are visible. When it comes to taking pictures of the horse's face head on, it would be helpful to move that forelock to the side if there's a white marking that goes up underneath the forelock. So if a star is hidden by the forelock, then you can probably tie the forelock back or move it aside so that the marking can be shown beneath that forelock. And anything else, if there's other markings that might be hidden, like a belly marking, you can add those photos as extras just for identification purposes, even though they won't be on the certificate itself. We would just keep them on file. Here's an example of some registration photos being shot in a strong evening light. So it's a clear sky and the sun is setting, so we have a shadow that is coming in from the side. This can be helpful if you're trying to get the sunlight to reflect off of the side of the horse that you're taking the photo of, but it can also backfire if the horse is not facing the sunlight in a way that you get the broad reflection of light off of the horse. So as you can see in the left photo, we have the light reflecting off of the horse and reducing the amount of shadows that we see. Although you still see a strong shadow on the rear and under the belly, you can, for the most part, see the entire horse, and there's not a lot of shadows obscuring it. But the most important thing, of course, is to be able to see the markings, and if there are any white markings, that those would be visible. In both photos, the horse is taken from the right angle where we have it at a lower perspective, so we don't have that top looking down at the horse angle. It's far enough back where we get the horse in the entire view, and we also have a little bit of buffer room around so that we have room for cropping, and that it also has less of that distortion effect that I was talking about with the lens. The photo on the right, you can see that the horse is not facing quite enough to the sun so that we can prevent the strong shadows from crossing over the horse's body. As you can see, the hip is casting a shadow onto the back, and the belly is casting a shadow onto the elbow, and the shoulders casting a shadow onto the neck. And all these shadows casting across the horse are obscuring what the horse might look like. However, it's less of a concern because there are usually no pinto markings on Caspians, for the purebreds anyway. And but if you do have a pinto for a part bred, it would be a good idea to prevent these types of shadows from popping up. So the angle of your horse, even so slightly changed, can affect how well the photo turns out. Again, the goal is to make sure that the markings are visible. This horse had no markings, so we were just getting visual confirmation of the horse with these photos, and these are adequate for registration. Perhaps the most complicated part of the whole registration process, and the most frustrating, would be filling out the forms and making sure that you have done everything and dotted every I and crossed every T, or at least typed them. So we're going to walk through step 2 on how to fill out a form. And more specifically, we're going to do this one online, although you do have the option to print them and then to fill out by hand. For all things registry related, you can go to our website, caspian.horse. We have a registration tab where you can access our registry services. This is our online store to pay registration fees. Or you can download our forms, and then you can print them out and mail in your fees with the forms, or you can email the forms. And then a list of requirements as reminders for what you need for each type of registration. Let's visit the store. In our Registry Services store, you will see that there is a section for memberships, DNA and ID, that's your microchip, then certificates, transfers, stallions, and merchandise. Let's go to certificates. This is your first step on your journey to registering your horse. Do you have a part bred that you'd like to register, or a purebred? We have the selection here with no microchip or a selection with a microchip included. Let's say you've already microchipped your horse and you just want to purchase the registration. So you can select a purebred registration with no microchip from here. This will bring you to a page that will give you a little more information about the selection. It will also link back to your registration requirements, and it will give you a link to the form that you would need to download that would accompany this particular fee. You would select the age of the horse that you are registering. Let's say it is a foal under 12 months of age. And then a certificate. You can select from gold or silver in the purebred section. Once you've made your selection, you can enter your quantity. And then you would add to your cart. You can keep on shopping in the store, or you can go to your cart and check out. Your cart will give you a preview like this, and the checkout button. The checkout button has a lot of information where it asks for your email address, for your payment type and your delivery methods and so on. Once you have purchased your registration order through the online store, then you can go back and fill out your forms and submit those. Once you have completed your purchase, now it's time to download your forms. Go to the Registration tab and select the Forms page. If you're going to be mailing in your forms, you will need to download a purchase order and fill out that to accompany with your other forms. But today, we are only going to be doing email, and we are selecting the Purebred registration application form, which is right here. When you download the form, it will give you a prompt that you're downloading a file. We have saved the forms into zip files so that it will automatically download. If we did not do this, the file would have opened up in a PDF in your browser, and PDFs that open up in browsers don't function properly with form fields. So this is the route that we have taken. Simply open up the folder once it's downloaded, and it'll give you the file that you need to open. This will open it in Adobe Acrobat, the program that we need it to operate in so that it functions properly for inputting your data. Now you are ready to fill out your form. For your first name choice, enter the name that you want to name your horse. The first word should be your farm name if you have one. We're going to enter Cascadia Fizzlepop Berry Twist. In the second field, you enter your second name choice, in case there's any issue with the first one. We're going to just use Fizzy. The rest of the information is what you should have tracked when the foal was born, and you can reference the parentage through the registration papers that you have on file for them. If you need reminders, some of this information is available in our online database with caspian.pedigreeonline.com. So the birth date would be May 22nd of year 2023. And Fizzy is a mare. We're going to register for Section A, or the gold registration. This is the base color, and you would select whatever the base color is beneath any modifiers. So Fizzy's base color is bay, and she has a modifier of done on top of that. Okay, and when it comes to markings, first we start with the leg markings. If the horse has no leg markings, you would just leave these blank. Other markings will include head and body markings. Fizzy, she has a very small star, so we will just write faint star. And no body markings, so we would leave it blank. That brings us to our parent information. For parent information, you can go to our website and get it from our Caspian database, or you can pull out your certificates and copy the information over from there. Since this is an online website tutorial included in all this, let's go and visit our online Caspian studbook. That's available on our website. So you would just go to the Caspian section here and you'll see studbook. After you click the link, you'll be sent to the directory of Caspian horses. This will list all the Caspians known to be available worldwide. So as you can see, I am already logged in, but you may have to log in if you haven't logged in a while. Let's begin our search for Dear Fizzy's parents. Her sire is MCC Nadersnachti, but you don't need to type in the whole thing. It will run a search based off of any information that you put into the search field. So let's write Nachti. And while the prompt will say it didn't find Nachti specifically, it brings up the next best thing. Similar name, MCC Nadersnachti. And here he is. And this is his full pedigree. It gives you a photo of him and also his information that you can use to enter. And you'll see that he has the registry, Caspian Horse Breeders Association here. His registration number is 0013A. Under the health information, you will also get his stallion license number, which is SL004. We will enter this information into our form. I've skipped ahead and I've entered in Nachti's information and Talia III's information. Those are the parents for Fizzy. Now we enter the breeder information. This is usually your own information if you owned the mare when she had the foal. You'll see at the bottom of the form, there's information for transferring your horse. This information is optional in case you have sold the horse before the time you have registered the horse. It is included in the registration fee. There's not an additional fee for this particular type of transfer. Transfer fees usually occur after registration. Let's skip ahead to the registration photos. The registration photos page allows you to upload photos for these spots here on the form. So there is a guidance here that says the best fit would be these ratios, and it gives you an approximate cropping size that the photos should be in before you upload them. This is generally important so that the photos don't get squished or morphed into flatter or more narrow looking images of your horse. If you have any concerns with this part of the form, you can always scan the images separately and add them as an attachment in an email, or you can print them up and mail them to us. We are rather flexible when it comes to the photos, so this ultimately is just another option in how you can send the photos to us. But this also serves a different function because you can draw on these And in lieu of photos for the silver registration, you can just write the markings down on these horse pictograms, and that will suffice the photo requirement for the silver registration. It's an option if you would like to draw markings on these for the gold and then also submit photos. Now we have some instructions here for how to access the pen tool, but Adobe is always updating their structure, and so they've brought the pen tool up to the front of the Adobe program, so you don't have to go digging for it anymore. In fact, you could just search for the tool here, type in pen, and it will bring up a pen tool. But it is also over here now with this little squiggly line where you want to draw. And then you can draw the markings of your horse. Let's say, you could draw the socks here. If there's a belly splotch, you could draw a little belly splotch. And wide blazes, you can draw along the side. With Fizzy, of course, she's got a really tiny star, so we're just going to be drawing a little tiny star right here. And there you go. That's her markings. If you're not drawing the markings and you're uploading, then you'd have your selection tool, and as you can see, when you hover over this, it changes into a pointer finger. This means that there's something that you can open. And you can browse for the photo, and it'll show you a sample of the photo, and then you can enter that photo by selecting OK when you're done. Let's cancel our way out of this. Let's say that I'm just going to be emailing the photos as a digital attachment to the email for this registration. Now when it comes to the signature, you can click on the signature and it will give you an option for, so you can select the one that you have already created. I have created a digital one. Or you can use this tool to add a signature, and it will let you actually sign. It will fill in a font, or you can draw. I do not have a very good mouse right now, so it's just going to be like pretty rough squiggles. This is not my actual signature, by the way. Then you would hit apply, and it would put it in the signature line with a click of a button. And you can adjust the size of it, or you could delete it and try again. And then enter your date. Today's date is the 22nd of July, 2023. For the sake of this, we're just going to add a typed signature, but I would recommend entering a drawing or an image of your signature. Although the typing one, that can be acceptable, it's generally preferred to do drawing or an image or the digital signature. Anyway, I'm going to apply this. I'm going to enter it here. you'll see that you also have the option to add the attachments to the PDF here. You can either add the attachments to the PDF or directly to the email. The attachments to the PDF just package it all into one file, and it's usually a little neater to do it that way. Again, we offer a lot of options, and this is just another way for you to be able to send us photos. With that, you can hit the Submit Form button. Now, the Submit Form button, as you can see, says send the data to chba@caspian.horse. So what it is doing, it is making an email. This is for people who have an email program that is configured with their software to be able to bring up the PDF, and usually we're talking about Outlook as one of them. If this button doesn't work, don't worry, you can still save the file and save it to your desktop, and then attach it to your email as you would normally do. Here you have the save icon, and if you want to print it out, you have your print icon. So there's multiple ways to handle how to send the PDF. But I was just trying to walk you through so you could see all the options for filling out this form completely digitally, processing it completely digitally, so that we can step away from the paper and the mailing and the stamps and the envelopes. Although, if that is your preference, it's perfectly acceptable too. Step 3 is implanting a microchip. Microchips are only required for our gold registration, which is section A for purebred Caspians, and it's optional for all the others. However, we do recommend microchipping your horse. You can make an appointment with your veterinarian to implant the microchip. This is strongly recommended because the veterinarian will take the precautions against infection at the injection site and will also place a chip more accurately than the rest of us unprofessional people can, which would prevent migration. Now, even when veterinarians implant microchips, there will occasionally still be some migration, or maybe the microchip will just stop functioning altogether. This doesn't necessarily need to be addressed as an emergency, but please let us know if you have difficulty scanning the microchip or the microchip fails, and we can help replace your microchip. But your vet must scan the microchip after it's implanted and sign the form for the microchip form. We have a microchip ID and or DNA sample submission form, which can be used for just the microchip or just the DNA, but generally when you're registering a horse, you're going to be filling out both of this information anyway, and so we have combined it into one form. So yes, the veterinarian signature is required specifically for scanning the chip. This is just to verify that the chip is functional and that we can record that number as the microchip number for that particular horse that you're registering. So we've provided sort of a checklist for you to prepare for microchipping your horse. First of all, you want to make an appointment with your veterinarian to do the microchipping. If you have an on-call veterinarian that is mobile and can come out to you, all the better, then you don't have to take your horse in. But if you do have that on-call veterinarian, this is what you can do to make the environment better and easier for everyone to get the microchipping done in the least amount of time and the least amount of stress for you, your horse, and your vet. So before the vet arrives to implant the horse, make sure the following are ready and accessible. You want to have your microchip. This may be your own microchip that you've purchased on your own or a microchip that you have purchased from us. Although we recommend you purchasing from us, we don't require our microchips to be used because we just want to ensure that the horse is microchipped. That's our number one concern, is that the horse is getting a microchip. So you will have to have a printed out pre-filled microchip form. This will help your vet so that the information doesn't have to be filled out while you're there with your horse and your vet standing there next to you. The vet's only concern is, of course, scanning the microchip, making sure that numbers match, and then signing the form. You want to have your horse there, of course. Um, but the best thing to do to prepare is to place your horse in a small pen or in a stall so that the horse doesn't have a chance to run off or have to be tracked down from the pasture to try to get the vet out there to microchip the horse. This just makes it a whole lot easier and accessible. Have a halter on your horse before the vet gets there, because this will make it much, much easier. If that horse were to get unruly, then you can hold on to the halter and you're not chasing your horse down to put a halter on him or her. And also have a lead rope nearby so that that lead rope can be used to clip onto the halter if your horse decides to start acting up. Why do I mention this? Is because usually people are microchipping young horses that have this might be their first veterinarian experience and they've never seen this person. The vet's going to be doing procedures that the horse has never felt before, and the needles are rather large. The gauge is nothing's to joke about. I mean, it's quite a significant needle to be sticking into a little horse. So the vet's going to be concerned about the horse's comfort, of course, and clip the area on the neck and put on a disinfectant before injecting the microchip. Your vet may even go the extra mile and not sedate the horse, but inject with a local anesthetic so that the horse has a numbing agent so that when it gets to the larger needle that poke won't be so bad. And maybe just the numbing agent will be the most of the surprise is done with that. That will help the experience for the horse be a much more acceptable and more mild experience versus taking a large needle and sticking it in the horse without any prep. So that's the biggest reason to get your vet involved, because they just take the extra time and the extra precautions to make it a better experience for your horse. Foals, of course, they might still throw themselves on the ground. Be there for your vet, to be an extra handler. Try to help keep the horse calm and in control. This will make it go much smoother. And then in a few days, maybe your horse will forgive you for what you have done to it. This is also a great time to collect a DNA sample, and we'll go and cover that next. Step 4, and our final step for this registration process, is collecting and sending in a DNA sample. So collecting hair for a DNA sample is essentially what we're looking for. Some people might think that you need blood to process DNA, but that was done in the past, and now we switched over to hair, and the genetic material that they use is found in the root bulb, so the very base of the hair from the follicle. So how do we collect hair for a DNA sample? The first and foremost thing is that you want your horse to be restrained. So you either have someone holding the horse for you if it's a baby, or you can have the horse on a halter and lead and have the horse tied, or someone can be holding the horse on the halter and lead. A restrained horse is much easier to collect hair from than a horse out in a pasture, because the horse might not enjoy having its hair yanked. So that's the first thing that we would recommend. As for how to collect the hair sample, quickly running through it, you can pull it with your fingers. You can use a tool to pull the hair, and then use an envelope to put the hair into, and then when you seal the envelope, do not use saliva because of cross-contamination. And we want to avoid cross-contamination because it can slow down the process of of processing your registration. Contamination might result in needing to pull another hair sample. It can just slow the process in general. So we're going to show you a couple videos on how to prevent contamination in collecting your samples. So the videos will follow in the next slide. We have Cascada bucephalus here, and we're going to take some hair from his tail region for DNA testing. The goal is to pull hairs so that you can get the plug of the hair from the follicle. And that hair plug will have the DNA material you need for DNA testing. The goal is to get approximately 30 to 40 hairs. So you can either use your fingers and twist the hair around your fingers and yank the hair, or you can use needle nose pliers. And then here's Taylor's showing you how to wrap the hair around your finger, and then you would tug really hard to try and pull. Caspian hair tends to be a little bit slippery, especially with babies, and so success rates of pulling the hair that way tend to be lower. We recommend trying needle nose pliers if your fingers are not able to grip enough hair all at once. You can also, if you want, take a few separate pulls if you want to reduce the amount of hair from one area that is taken. So Taylor will show you the best way to pull with pliers. You approach the hair with the pliers twisted a specific direction.
Yeah, so if you're grabbing them with the pliers, which is easy to do, close to the base, and you're going to be rotating it, and I've found it's easiest to do thumbs down to grab it, and then I can just twist like that, and the action just automatically pulls the hair out at the root.
Then you can hold it up to a light colored surface to try to count your root bulbs.
I'm going to need one more pull.
Yes, this looks like it's a little bit short, so he'll need a few more. When it comes to collecting your sample, do not touch the hair. It's best to bring an envelope out with you when you're collecting your sample and putting the hair directly from the pull into the envelope. Touching hair of the horse can result in some contamination, especially if you were handling other horses before. So Taylor's going to be collecting additional hair from bucephalus so that we will have enough roots for the hair sample. I guess you can try with pulling with your fingers, but the pliers definitely are an easier way to pull hair. That one really startled him, but
there you go. So there's a bunch of bulbs in here.
Yes, that's a huge chunk.
That's, yeah, way more hair than you need here.
Again, put the hair sample, roots facing the same direction. Yep. So that the hair follicles all line up the same way when it comes time to send them. And then using a smaller envelope usually will make it easier to put in a larger envelope when it comes to mailing the sample in. So we use the animal genetics laboratory, and they prefer to receive hair in an envelope or a plastic bag. We're a little bit more conscious of the environment, so we try to avoid using plastic bags. So we recommend an envelope. We can print envelopes for you and send them at your request. These small envelopes fit into a larger envelope for mailing forms. So once you've collected the hair, you can write the name of the horse on the envelope, and then you can mail it in. We have Cascada bucephalus here, and we're going to take some hair from his. We have Cascada. So you might wonder if I encourage you to not touch the sample to avoid contamination with your own DNA. What do you do about closing the flap? Most often people will lick the flap, but that would put your DNA in proximity with the sample. So the best option when dealing with this is you can take a paper towel and get it wet, and then rub that wet paper towel along the glue and re-wet it, and then you can seal it. And no DNA, no contamination. You can also use tape if you prefer, and tape it along the edge of the sample so that the whole flap is covered. That's all. And with that, that brings us to the end of our webinar. Thank you so much for your attendance and for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to pop those into the chat. I'm going to be looking at them and I will answer you in chat. If you think of questions after this, or if you're watching this as a recording, you can email me your questions. Email them to chba@caspian.horse. You can also go onto our website, caspian.horse, to reach our contacts page and drop us a message that way if you prefer. But I will be as responsive as possible and get back to you as quickly as I can regarding any registration questions that you may have. We welcome anyone who would like to register their horses with us. It doesn't matter where in the world you are. We will do our best to help serve you because we are helping to serve the Caspian breed. And with that, I wish you a very wonderful day.